Good morning, everybody. I want to tell you a story today, a story about from Genesis to Exodus, this journey that we took from the first Android phone to what we're going to launch today, which is called the Exodus, this crypto phone. And the story starts, it's a story from the Bible. And I think contrary to common understanding, in this story, the Israelites, they did not want a god. They wanted a king. And they wanted a king because just like their neighbors, the Assyrians, the Babylonians, and here in the Egyptians, they were much more powerful. They were much more efficient. And I think most of humankind history, what we've seen is these hierarchies, these centralized powers that are able to produce these incredible monuments. And in this case, Egypt and the pyramids, and I find it interesting that Elad, in the previous talk, used these same images of what these things represent. But I think in this book that came out about a year ago by this scholar named Parag Khanna, he talks about our human will to connect. And in this book called Connectography, he talks about all the things we've built to connect. We've built 64 kilometers of roads, 4 million kilometers of railways, 2 million kilometers of pipelines, and 1 million kilometers of internet cables, versus 500,000 kilometers of walls and borders. It's clear that we live in a connected world today. It's clear that we want to connect, that we want to cross these borders, that we want to cross these walls. And I think for us at Exodus, the reason why we chose Berlin to launch this phone today was because, for several reasons. I think if any city who knows the history of walls, it's Berlin. The second reason is because I think Europe has the most sort of respect in the world for people's personal data. Here's an image of two very contrasting monuments. One was built in the industrial age, of course, the train, and one was built in the information age. I think the more interesting distinction here is one was built from a centralized model, and the other was a decentralized model. I think here today, we're in this whole movement that we're doing with the Exodus and with the Web3 Foundation is we believe we can build more incredible monuments, just like Wikipedia, just like Linux, in this decentralized manner. And that's why we're here, right? That was the promise of the internet, was that we would live in a world without borders. This term, homo dictius, is relational man. It's the connected man, right? The networked man. I think those are the things that got me interested about building technology. And I think a lot of people in this room, that was the reason why we got into technology, is that we thought we could build something that would connect people beyond these borders, beyond these walls, right? And that's what we did. And it's interesting to think about this because it's been 10 years, right? This is the first Android phone that HTC launched back in 2008 of September. It's been 10 years and 1 month to this day. And that was the dream in which we were building, and this phone was called the HTC Dream, and the dream of building an open source phone with open collaboration. But as we all know, that was not how the story unfolded in the mobile internet. What really happened is corporate sovereigns divided this humanity into a handful of walled gardens. It was the convergence of three very powerful forces, right? It was the convergence of big data, the convergence of artificial intelligence, and the convergence of cloud. Big cloud data AI companies together that sort of hijacked this open source movement into owning everybody's identities, owning everybody's digital assets and data. And so, again, we're talking about a world ruled by very, very powerful centralized data companies. And again, I find it also interesting that the previous speaker, Elad, quoted Yuval Noah Harari. He wrote this article called Why Technology Favors Tyranny. And it's clear, right? I think everybody in this room understands why big data, AI, really controls the future destiny they're more powerful than any government we know today. They have the most information about people's identities, biometric data, commercial data, intellectual data, it's health data. It's all of that together and centralized in the hands of the few. And so I think today it's very clear that these 7 countries, they're the new empire, right? GAFA and BAD. That's Google, Amazon, Facebook, Apple. And in China, it's Baidu, Alibaba, Tencent. I think these 7 companies together own most all of our data. I think what's interesting with GDPR is, we're trying to reverse that, and I think everybody in this room with the Web3 Summit is trying to change that. But something else happened 2008, 2009. I think it's fascinating to think that, we launched the first Android phone September of 2008, and only a few months later, January of 2009, the first Bitcoin, the Genesis block, was launched. And of course, this is the story that sort of is the first protocol that transcended these internet borders, right? The internet borders of big data, sort of centralized clouds. And it's interesting to me to think back, as I was writing this talk, to see that it was only a few months apart. While we were building this open source phone, we thought we were connecting this world through collaboration and open and sharing of knowledge. What really happened in this kind of quiet revolution was Bitcoin in January 2009. And so here today, we want to announce this Exodus phone. This is the back of the phone. And today, we want to announce our first early access. And here is our phone called the Exodus 1. This is the phone here. It's the Exodus. We're calling this is our tagline, Genesis block, Exodus phone. And we're only accepting Bitcoin and ETH for this first product. So how are we going to do this, right? That was the vision, but we want to talk about 3 specific things that we want to empower this whole group in here, how we're going to partner with everybody in this room. The first thing is hold your own keys. We think that is the fundamental thing for this sort of Web3 thing to happen. If you don't hold your own keys, then there's really little point in taking the second, third, fourth step in this sort of decentralized Web3 world. Second is we're going to explain to you what we mean by social key recovery. And third, we're going to be sort of empowering you and all of your apps with secure hardware. We're going to announce, and we want to connect with all your apps through our key management API. So first, the wallet. We're calling it Zion. It's literally a hardware wallet. We're using the ARM Trust Zone, so much like it's considered a trusted execution environment. You can think of it as a micro OS that runs in parallel with Android, and that's the place where we hold your own keys. And I cannot stress what that idea or that principle even more, because again, owning your own private keys to me is the foundation of owning your own identity, owning your own crypto assets, owning your own data. I think that's the number one thing we're trying to that's the number one thing we're here trying to secure. But we're also reaching out to the community here, the cryptographic community, to help us make this even more secure, right? And this is what we've learned in the past 10 years, right? On the left-hand side, you can see that's the Android stack, right? On the right-hand side is sort of the new stack we want to build with all of you, right? We're going to provide a secure enclave in the hardware, and we want to connect with you with our APIs. Social key recovery. So the next thing becomes, now that your phone holds this important piece of the ecosystem, what happens when you lose your phone, right? And it is a hard problem, right? And we're trying to solve this, and I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with Shamir secret sharing, right? We want to, the out-of-the-box experience when you get your phone is we're using Shamir to split your keys into 3 or 5 different parties. We're calling it social because in the beginning, our 1.0 version, we want you to share between your friends. So pick 3 to 5 close friends, share your keys, and of course, it's only for recovery purposes. The other thing we wanted to talk about is, the last thing we're going to talk about is our key management API. And the way we think about it is, we're calling it Zion because, if you see the movie Matrix, it's this last human city. And the API is like the ship. The ship is the Nebuchadnezzar that connects you from different parts of the city. And so today we want to offer you, we want to connect with all, whether you're a wallet, whether you're an exchange, whether you're a blockchain, whether you're gaming that wants to use our hardware to sign transactions. We want to work with all of you. And so this is what we're building. We're trying to build this secure new world. We believe that what the mobile internet, what it did not architect into it was security. And what we're trying right now is to build security and architect it directly into the phone. We want to build this decentralized web, this Web3, and rebuild this internet, this crypto internet, one phone at a time. And so you can see this is the world we're trying to build in. We're starting with Qualcomm's trusted execution environment, and we'll provide APIs to all of you. And we're not perfect, right? We need the help of this community from a security standpoint, from a partnership standpoint, to build this world. Because after all, Rome was built in one day. But it is our dream. And we're back to building the HTC dream again. It's through the Exodus. Thank you. Are we taking questions here? Okay. I think we have 5 minutes of questions. Sorry, say that again? Yes, it's open source. Yeah.
So I can find the hardware design of this
crypto
model.
So in the beginning, we want to test out all the APIs first, and then we want to work with a few partners to make sure we get it right before we open it. And so right now we're working maybe with 3-5 parties and getting these APIs right. And we want more help from the cryptographic community to help sort of harden this before we open it.
First off, thanks for taking just Bitcoin and Ethereum. I think that's really cool. Question, how come you're not accepting any privacy coins?
We're just starting with sort of Bitcoin. You mean in terms of payment? Yeah, we're just starting with Bitcoin and ETH right now. I think that was the most sort of one that we saw most of the cryptographic community has. I think in the future we will. but I think in this first iteration, I think it's interesting. Like we had to reinvent the whole sort of payment channel because we're distributing this in many countries, and we ran into a lot of difficulties because our distributors, for example, of course, they wouldn't take Bitcoin or ETH, right? They only take fiat cash. And so a lot of things have to be reinvented from the ground up in terms of, receiving payments, what can be done. And so I think Bitcoin and ETH is already a huge leap for, even for us, a traditional sort of commercial company. And so we're taking baby steps. And so we're starting with Bitcoin and ETH.
So thank you for this great initiative. A bit tough question. We're talking about decentralization here, and the device or the software can be as trusted as the underlying hardware, right? So like for me as a consumer, how can you give any direction of how can I be persuaded that there are no backdoors and the hardware, like the protocols which I run on it and software is secure, but like how do I know that hardware is secure and not tampered and like?
I think in the beginning, like I said, I think we're working with a few partners, and from those partners, we want to figure out what's the right sort of process, the right APIs to provide. I think in terms of trust, I think in time you'll see us opening more and more. I think our intention is not just to open source even the software. I think if possible, we want to be even open source the hardware, right? But like this gentleman's questions, we're taking baby steps, right? I think there are also a lot of other hoops we need to jump around with proprietary chip design, right? And those are things that we don't control directly. But we're taking baby steps in terms of, okay, providing this trusted execution environment, and then sort of figuring out all the APIs, opening it. I think you guys also know more better than I do, like sort of all the challenges that you hit in this sort of mobile internet centralized network that we're building from, right? We have to reinvent the whole stack, and what that means is we have to reinvent software, hardware, and things of that nature. And so, I don't know if that answered your question, but we're taking one step at a time. Yeah.
Hi there. First, I just want to thank you for the presentation. I'm really excited about this phone.
Where am I looking?
I've got a couple. Oh, the box is right here.
Oh.
I've got a couple of concrete questions. I'm just wondering, first of all, if there's going to be like a Web3 provider, if it's like an Android phone, so that you'll be able to integrate into Android just as easily as web dApps, and also if the phone will be running an Ethereum Light node or whether it'll be securing the network.
I mean, we want to run as many light nodes as possible, right? I think it's a catch-22. Like, how ready is the Ethereum Light node? How ready is, I don't know, Lightning light nodes? Of course, we want to be able to partner with whenever the light nodes are our main nets are ready for us to distribute. But that's what we're here for. We're here to reach out and say, hey, we're ready to, if your node or your application is ready to ship, we're going to distribute it, for sure. Sorry, there was another question around whether it's Android. I think right now, I mean, that's what we're figuring out, right? Well, you'll still be able to run all your Android apps, and then there's the secure world, which right now we're working with limited partners to figure out this API. So these kind of run in parallel. Yeah.
He's ready. Great.
Can you share more about the specs of the phone? What particular new features or hardware components are you most excited about that's going to be really different than the traditional generation of HTC phones that we've seen in the past?
I don't think there's anything special in terms of hardware spec with any other phone on this market. I think what we've seen in the smartphone space. This space has really sort of plateaued in terms of camera, in terms of pixels, in terms of screen size, all of that things, right? I think the most important thing, what we're doing is we're giving the consumer the power to own their own keys, right? And this ARM trust zone thing, it's not new either, right? I think, many corporates have used it. For example, Netflix, right? They hold their DRMs in these trust zone within the chip, right? But I think the innovation here is it's the first time we're sort of handing that power to the people again, right? And I think that's what we should care about. I think that's what the community here cares about. I think hardware specs, will be on par with any other super smartphone. But I think, again, the key is to hold your own keys. I think that's the foundation that we're focused on. Cool. It will be available by December. Yeah. And I didn't include in the, but go to htc.com or htcexodus.com for your early access orders. One last question? Oh, no? Okay. Well, I'll take questions after outside. We also have Lawrence, our product manager, and our technical team here if you want to have more conversations around how to work with us. Thank you.